If there has ever been a moment in your life when you wondered why you still feel exhausted, even after trying so hard, why love seems to arrive only to leave again, why peace feels so close yet never truly stays, then perhaps the answer is not that you are not good enough. Perhaps, very possibly, it lies somewhere deeper. If the reason you cannot hold on to peace, cannot feel whole, cannot believe that you deserve to be loved, is not because you lack value, but because you have never truly loved yourself, then what changes? We grow up with the habit of striving, giving, sacrificing, pleasing others, believing that only when we are recognized do we have worth. Yet the more we do, the more empty we feel. The Buddha did not teach people to love themselves by becoming better than someone else. He taught us to stop turning away from ourselves. This video does not come to fix you or demand that you become more perfect. It gently helps you remember what has always been there, your inherent worth. Lesson 1. Chasing is a sign of self-doubt. When a person does not truly believe in their own worth, they often begin to run. They run after love, run after validation, run after success, run after the gaze and approval of others. They tell themselves that if they just try a little harder, sacrifice a little more, improve a little further, then they will be loved, chosen, and valued. Yet deep within, this act of chasing carries a very quiet message. I am not enough. I must do something to prove that I deserve to exist in this life. And it is this silent belief that becomes the root of unrest. In Buddhist teachings, suffering does not arise from desire itself, but from attachment. Attachment to outcomes, to one's image in the eyes of others, to the belief that safety only comes after achieving something. The Buddha taught that when the mind clings, suffering arises. When the mind loosens its grip, peace appears. Chasing is a very subtle form of attachment. It wears the clothing of effort, willpower, and positive ambition. Yet underneath lies the fear of not being seen or recognized. Imagine a small bird resting in the palm of your hand. If you panic and quickly close your hand because you are afraid it might fly away, what happens? The bird struggles and does everything it can to escape. But if you open your hand, relax, and remain calm and gentle, the bird may stay. Or if it flies away, you do not harm it or yourself. Love, peace, and the things we long for in life share this same nature. The more they are chased from a place of lack, the more they retreat. Truly loving yourself does not begin with doing more, proving more, or striving to become more worthy. Truly loving yourself begins with stopping. Stopping the pursuit meant to fill an inner emptiness. Stopping the habit of placing your worth in the hands of others. When you stop running, you begin to listen. When you stop running, you begin to feel where you are and what you already carry within you. And when you no longer need to prove that you are enough, you become enough. Not because the world confirms it, but because for the first time, you stop turning away from yourself. From this moment of stillness, the journey of self-love truly begins. Lesson 2. Life reflects your beliefs about yourself. When you pause as described in the previous lesson and stop chasing in order to prove your worth, a deeper question begins to arise. If I no longer need to chase, then what is truly shaping my life? According to the Buddha's teachings, the outer world is not separate from the inner mind. The life we are experiencing is a quiet reflection of the beliefs we hold about ourselves. We often think that we attract what we desire, yet in truth, we attract what we believe we deserve to receive. If deep within we believe that we are not good enough, not important enough, not worthy of being fully loved, then no matter how many opportunities, people, or words of praise life brings, we still feel empty. Not because those things are wrong, but because our inner belief is not spacious enough to hold them. The Buddha taught that suffering does not come from a lack of material conditions or circumstances, but from ignorance. Here, ignorance means not seeing our true worth. Imagine your mind as a bowl. If the bowl has cracks, no matter how much water you pour into it, the water will slowly leak out. Not because there is not enough water, but because the bowl cannot hold fullness. Life is the same. You may have love, success, and care. But if your belief about yourself is fractured, you will live with a constant sense of lack. A lack of safety, a lack of trust, a lack of wholeness. And then you wonder why you keep repeating painful relationships, exhausting cycles, and familiar disappointments. In the Japanese art of kintsugi, broken bowls are not hidden or discarded. Gold is used to mend the cracks. When finished, the bowl is not only repaired, but becomes more beautiful and unique. Buddhism views human pain in a similar way. Wounds do not make us less valuable. They are the places where light can enter, if we do not turn away from them. When we see ourselves as lacking, the world continues to bring situations that confirm that belief. Not as punishment, but as reflection. And when we begin to look directly at our cracks with awareness and compassion, when we stop seeing ourselves as not enough, the inner bowl slowly becomes whole. At that point, without trying to attract anything, life begins to flow in naturally. Not because we change the world, but because we change the way we see ourselves. From here, the journey of loving yourself moves into a deeper layer. Lesson 3. Stillness is the strongest magnet. As you begin to recognize that life reflects your beliefs about yourself, a very natural shift takes place within. You are no longer so quick to react. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself excessively. You no longer feel driven to prove that you are right, capable, or worthy. From this point, stillness slowly emerges. Yet many people are afraid of stillness. They believe that if they remain quiet, they will be forgotten. If they do not speak up, they will be left behind. If they do not perform, they will fade into the background. But according to Buddhist wisdom, the truth is entirely the opposite. The world we live in is loud. The sounds of comparison, competition, expectation, and fear constantly surround the mind. In this noise, people easily believe that they must speak more, do more, and assert themselves more strongly in order to have value. But the Buddha taught that when the mind is restless, wisdom cannot reveal itself. Only when the mind settles does clarity have the space to arise. When the mind is still, insight becomes clear. This is not the silence of avoidance. It is the silence of understanding. Observe a lake. When the surface is disturbed by wind, reflections become distorted. But when the water is calm, the sky and the moon appear clearly. Human beings are the same. When the mind is constantly pulled by worry and desire, we cannot see who we truly are or where we stand. Stillness does not make us smaller. It makes us grounded. It creates a solid foundation that allows us to stand within ourselves without leaning on applause or external approval. Truly loving yourself does not mean always speaking up to be acknowledged. Loving yourself means trusting yourself enough that you do not need to shout your importance. When you are no longer afraid of being overlooked, you no longer compete for attention. When you rest in your own worth, your presence naturally carries weight. Others may not remember exactly what you said, but they will remember how they felt in your presence. And that feeling comes from inner stillness. In Buddhism, stillness is the soil where mindfulness and compassion grow. When you slow down, you not only hear others more clearly, you begin to hear yourself. You start to notice unconscious reactions, old fears, and long-held protective habits. Through this awareness, you are no longer swept away. You remain steady, without noise, without proving, simply present. From this stillness, a very different kind of attraction is born. Not the attraction of effort, but the attraction of ease. And this is the sign that you are learning to love yourself at a deeper level. Lesson 4. Letting go of attachment is the highest form of faith. When stillness begins to take root in the mind, we gradually recognize something very subtle. Much of the suffering in life does not come from what we lack, but from how tightly we hold on. We cling to a relationship out of fear of loss. We cling to an outcome out of fear of failure. We cling to an image of ourselves out of fear of being looked down upon. And in this clinging, we often mistake it for love, for care, for the effort to preserve what matters. Yet beneath it all, what is truly operating is fear. Buddhism calls this state attachment, and attachment, in whatever form it appears, becomes fertile ground for suffering to grow. Letting go does not mean abandoning. Letting go is not indifference, nor is it turning away from life. Letting go is a very deep act of faith. Faith that we do not need control to be safe. Faith that we do not need to hold tightly in order to be loved. Faith that even when something leaves, our worth does not leave with it. When we let go, we lose nothing at all. We simply return freedom to both ourselves and others. Imagine a butterfly resting on your open palm. If you are afraid it will fly away and you close your hand tightly, what will happen? The butterfly will panic, struggle, and may be harmed. But if you keep your hand open and relaxed, allowing space, the butterfly may stay longer. And even if it flies away, you still retain a sense of lightness within. Life is the same. Love, opportunity, and happiness cannot survive in suffocation. Holding tightly does not make what we love stay. It only makes everything more exhausting. The Buddha taught that we only truly lose what we cling to, not because life takes it away, but because clinging itself creates suffering in the mind. When we cling, we become afraid. When we are afraid, we react. And when we react from fear, we hurt ourselves and others. Letting go ends this cycle. Letting go is an exhale. Letting go is allowing things to be what they are, instead of forcing them to become what makes us feel safe. Truly loving yourself is revealed very clearly through your ability to let go of attachment. When you love yourself, you do not turn another person, an outcome, or a future into a condition for your happiness. You no longer whisper to life that without this, you are not okay. You stand in your own sense of wholeness and allow life to come closer through trust. From this letting go, a very deep faith is formed. Faith that you are enough. Faith that what truly belongs to you will never need to be held tightly. And it is this faith that brings a peace no form of control could ever create. Lesson 5. Compassion for yourself is true healing. When you have learned to let go of attachment and stand firmly in the belief that you are enough, a deeper question opens up. If I am no longer clinging to outcomes or to other people, how will I treat myself in my most vulnerable moments? Many people speak of healing as a process of fixing habits, fixing emotions, fixing the past, fixing oneself in order to become better. But in the light of the Buddha's teachings, healing does not begin with fixing yourself. Healing begins with stopping the harm you inflict upon yourself. Within every human being, there's a very small and fragile part, a part that has been afraid, a part that has felt abandoned, a part that has not been heard. Buddhism does not name this part using modern psychological terms, yet its understanding is very clear. It is the part of the mind still wounded by ignorance and suffering. As we grow older, we learn to hide this part. We become stronger, more rational. We tell ourselves that we must move on. Yet every time we fail, every time we make a mistake, every time emotions rise, we turn against ourselves. Why are you so weak? Why are you still not okay? Why can you not let go yet? And from there, a very quiet form of violence continues. Inner violence. Inner violence has no shouting. It leaves no visible wounds, yet it exhausts us, causes us to contract, and pulls us away from ourselves. We use harsh words to push ourselves to improve. We believe this is discipline, but deep down, it is a lack of compassion. The Buddha taught that suffering cannot end suffering. Hatred cannot be resolved by hatred. Only understanding and loving kindness can do that. This truth applies not only to others, but also to ourselves. True healing is not pushing pain away. Healing is turning back and holding it. Not to drown in the past, but to say, I see you. I will not abandon you anymore. When we place a hand on our heart during a difficult moment and allow emotions to exist without judgment, something very subtle happens. The mind softens, The breath deepens. Tension slowly dissolves. This is not a miracle. It is the natural effect of compassion. Truly loving yourself does not mean always feeling comfortable. Loving yourself means staying with yourself even when it is uncomfortable. It means not using words to beat your own soul whenever you are not perfect. When you choose compassion instead of criticism, you end the inner war. And when the inner war ends, healing energy begins to flow naturally, quietly, without force, with a very real warmth. From here, balance is gradually restored, not because you have fixed yourself, but because you have stopped turning away from yourself. Lesson 6. The world is a mirror of your inner dialogue. When compassion for yourself begins to be nurtured, you gradually recognize a very subtle connection between the inner and the outer world. The way you speak to yourself in moments when no one is watching quietly shapes how the world responds to you. Not always immediately, but persistently. Buddhism teaches that the mind is the root of all phenomena. When the mind carries harsh whispers, the world around you slowly takes on a similar tone. When the mind softens, life begins to soften as well. Listen to your inner dialogue during an ordinary day. When you make a mistake, what do you say to yourself? When you feel tired, do you allow yourself to rest, or do you accuse yourself of being weak? When you have not achieved what you hoped for, do you comfort yourself, or do you insult yourself? These words do not disappear into the air. They settle, seep into body and mind, and become the foundation for how you walk through life. Someone who constantly sees themselves as a burden easily accepts relationships where they are treated as less important. Someone who repeatedly tells themselves they are not enough easily remains in situations that require them to strive for recognition. The Buddha did not say that the world is our enemy. He said that the world is an expression of the mind, not to place blame, but to return power to us. When we understand this, we stop focusing only on changing other people or circumstances. We turn back to observe how we are treating ourselves. We begin to see that much of what we endure from the outside is something we have long endured within. Not because we deserve such treatment, but because we have taught the world that it is acceptable. There's a simple yet powerful question. If someone treated you exactly the way you treat yourself, would you stay? If the answer stirs discomfort, that is not failure. It is an invitation to begin a new conversation with yourself. One that is gentler, more honest, more kind. When you change the inner voice, you do not need to force the world to change. You simply set a new standard by respecting yourself. Gradually, what no longer fits will fall away on its own. Not in anger, but in clarity. Buddhism calls this right speech first directed inward. When your inner words become clear and compassionate, the energy you bring into the world also changes. Others may not immediately understand, but they will feel the boundaries and self-respect that radiate from you. Truly loving yourself is shown most clearly in how you speak to yourself when no one is listening. When you choose words that uplift rather than diminish, you send a very clear message to life, that you honor yourself. And when that message is sent consistently, the world begins to reflect it back in very natural ways. Not because you demanded it, but because you became a mirror for yourself. Lesson 7. Neediness pushes away what we desire. As you begin to change the way you speak to yourself and reset your standard of self-respect from within, another realization slowly becomes clear. Many of the things we long for in life do not move away because we are unworthy, but because we need them too much. Neediness is born from lack. When the mind believes it lacks safety, love, or value, it unconsciously tries to grasp anything that might fill that empty space. Yet it is this very sense of lack that creates a strong, repelling force, making what we want unable to stay. Buddhism does not view neediness as a mistake, but as a signal. It signals that somewhere within, we have forgotten our inherent wholeness. When we believe our happiness depends on a person, an outcome, or validation, we hand our peace over to the outside world. And when that power is no longer in our hands, we begin to beg. Beg to be loved. Beg to be chosen. Beg to be kept. But begging is not an invitation. Begging is the voice of fear. And fear makes our energy heavy. Imagine that you are gripping a rope tightly. This rope represents what you believe you need in order to be okay. A relationship, a goal, an image of yourself. You grip it so tightly that your hand aches, your body stiffens, your breath becomes shallow. When we live in neediness, we grip this rope every single day. We believe that if we let go, we will fall into emptiness. Yet the paradox is that it is the gripping itself that exhausts us. When you dare to open your hand, not to give up, but to breathe, a new space appears. A space where you feel yourself standing without needing to cling. A space where life can enter without being pulled or forced. The Buddha taught that when the mind lets go, the natural flow of life can move freely. When the mind is heavy with need, the flow is blocked. Wholeness does not mean having everything you want. Wholeness means feeling okay even when you do not yet have it. When you stop begging, you begin to receive. Receiving does not happen with clenched hands, but with an open heart. From this state of inner fullness, you no longer need to convince anyone to stay. You no longer need to force an outcome to happen. You become a place of refuge for yourself. And when you are a place of refuge, people and opportunities come to you because of ease, not pressure. That is when you realize something very deep. What truly belongs to you never needs to be asked for. It arrives when you no longer believe that you are lacking. From here, the journey of self-love shifts from seeking to receiving, from fear to trust, from gripping to openness. Lesson 8. Become what you want to receive. When you no longer beg and have learned to open your hands to receive, a very fundamental principle of Buddhism becomes clear in daily experience. Life does not operate according to what we ask for, but according to the state of mind we carry. We often say that we want to be loved, to be understood, to be at peace. Yet if we look more deeply, the question is not what we want, but how we are living each day. For in Buddhism, whatever seed is planted bears its corresponding fruit. As the mind is, so the world appears. Whatever we sow within the mind, even quietly, is already bearing fruit in our lives. If you long to be loved, but repeatedly abandon your own emotions, constantly force yourself to endure, to try harder, to stay silent and let things pass, then you are planting seeds of lack. Not because you are wrong, but because you have not yet learned to treat yourself as someone worthy of love. When you live as someone who does not listen to yourself, you are likely to encounter relationships that also do not listen to you. This is not punishment, it is reflection. Wanting to be loved does not begin with finding the right person. It begins with living as someone who knows how to love themselves, knowing when to pause when tired, knowing how to say no when necessary, knowing how to honor your feelings instead of dismissing them. When you treat yourself with respect, you plant a very powerful seed, the seed of value. And from that seed, the fruit of healthy relationships gradually appears, without urgency, without force. Similarly, if you long for peace but each day your mind is pulled by comparison, worry, conflict, and hurry, peace cannot take root. Peace is not something that arrives after everything is settled. Peace is a very small, yet steady choice. The choice to breathe more slowly. The choice not to react immediately. The choice to return to the present moment. Each time you choose peace instead of tension, you are planting a seed. And that seed, no matter how small, holds the full potential to become a garden. The Buddha taught that the mind leads all phenomena. When the mind changes, the world changes. Not because the world instantly transforms, but because you are no longer living from the same old perspective. You begin to act from wholeness rather than lack, from awareness rather than reaction, from love rather than fear. And when you become what you wish to receive, you do not need to wait for life's permission. Life responds naturally, not through magic, but through the natural correspondence between mind and world. At this level, truly loving yourself is no longer a concept. It becomes a way of living, the way you speak, the way you choose, the way you are present. You no longer need to ask when what you want will arrive, because the moment you live in alignment with it, you have already begun to receive. Lesson 9. Let the old self rest. When you begin to live as what you wish to receive and allow the mind to lead instead of longing, a deeper threshold opens. At this threshold, peace no longer comes from doing things right or being enough, but from your willingness to release a familiar image of yourself. This image once helped you survive. It helped you adapt. It helped protect you from further harm. Yet over time, it also became a tight garment that made it hard to breathe. Buddhism calls this the survival ego, a psychological structure formed from fear and defense. This ego is not bad. It simply cannot lead you to deep peace. The survival ego often carries many roles. The role of always being strong, the role of always pleasing others, the role of never being weak, the role of proving worth through achievement. These roles were once necessary in a certain chapter of life. But when you continue living in them without awareness, exhaustion begins to appear. You do not know why you are always tired, even without heavy effort. You do not know why you feel empty, even after achieving so much. These are signs that a part of you is ready to rest. In Buddhism, death does not always mean an ending. Death also means transformation, letting go of one form to return to essence. When the Buddha spoke of impermanence, he was not speaking only of the outer world, but also of the human self. Every identity can change. Every role can be set down. Allowing one identity to die is not losing yourself. It is how you return life to the truer part within. Imagine wearing a very thick coat in the middle of summer. That coat once kept you warm during an old winter. But if you do not take it off, your body will collapse from exhaustion. Letting go of old roles is the same. It is not a betrayal of the past. It is respect for the present. When you allow the old self to rest, you do not deny what you have lived through. You simply say that you no longer need to keep living from past fear. Rebirth in awareness does not happen through one grand decision. It begins with very small moments. The moment you do not react as before. The moment you stop trying to please. The moment you choose truth over performance. Each time, a layer of ego grows thinner. And as it thins, you feel lighter. You breathe more deeply. You become more present. Truly loving yourself at this level means allowing yourself to change without self-blame. Allowing yourself to no longer be who you once were without guilt. When the old self is allowed to rest, what appears is not emptiness, but a vast space. Space for new life. Space for peace. Space for a you who walks more gently on your own path. When the old self has been allowed to rest, and you are no longer trying to live through familiar survival roles, a very deep truth begins to reveal itself. This truth is not loud. It does not need proof. It simply exists. In the teachings of the Buddha, there is a beautiful concept called Buddha nature. Buddha nature is not something to be achieved. It does not arrive after you have finished healing, letting go, or becoming better. Buddha nature has always been there, whole and intact, untouched by anything you have lived through. You are not broken. You have never been broken. Even if you have suffered, wandered, reacted from fear, or done things you later regretted, none of those experiences reach the deepest part of you. Just as the sun continues to shine behind thick layers of clouds, Buddha nature remains present behind layers of ignorance, habits, and painful memories. The problem is not that you lack light. The problem is that you have forgotten how to look at the sky. We grow up in a world that teaches us we must become worthy in order to be loved. We must be better to be accepted. We must fix ourselves to deserve peace. But the universe does not love in this way. Trees do not need to prove themselves to receive sunlight. The ocean does not need permission to welcome the river. The universe loves through complete presence, by allowing everything to exist exactly as it is. When you love yourself the way the universe loves, you stop placing conditions on acceptance. Loving yourself at this level is no longer an action. It is a remembering. remembering that you have always belonged, remembering that you do not need to be fixed to be worthy of love, remembering that the parts of you that once broke did not make you lesser, but shaped the person sitting here now, breathing and listening. When you stop trying to become a different version of yourself in order to be loved, you begin to allow yourself to be loved in this very moment. The Buddha did not come to create a new person. He came to help human beings remember their true nature. When you sit still for a moment, slow your breath, and place a hand on your heart, you may feel this, not as a thought, but as a gentle warmth. This is the sign that you are touching the Buddha nature within you. Not to achieve anything, but to realize that you have never been separated from the love of the universe. You are not broken. You simply forgot. And the moment you remember, the journey of self-love no longer feels like effort. It becomes a return. As you have walked with us through each lesson, you may have felt a very gentle shift within. Not the feeling that you must change something immediately, but the feeling that you no longer need to keep chasing. When you love yourself deeply enough, you stop seeking validation from the outside in order to feel safe. You no longer need to prove that you are worthy. You no longer need to cling or beg. You stand still within yourself, and from that still point, life begins to move closer in a more natural way. Loving yourself does not make you selfish. It makes you whole. And when you are whole, you do not take from anyone. You simply share what is already present within you. If there is one thing to carry with you after this video, let it be permission. Permission to slow down. Permission to be imperfect. Permission to be loved even while you are still learning how to heal. The Buddha taught that the path of awakening is not about adding more, but about letting go. Letting go of fear. Letting go of self-blame. Letting go of turning away from yourself. If these words touched you, leave a very simple comment. I choose wholeness. Not to declare it to others, but to remind yourself. And if you wish to continue the journey of healing and returning to inner balance, subscribe to the Buddhist in Life channel. We are here not to teach you to become someone else, but to walk with you as you remember who you have always been.